Fantastic. Thank you everybody for joining today. It's a pleasure to have you here, and great to hear that from all across the UK and other countries overseas as well. So we're here for how to create a compelling profile, mainly on LinkedIn, but we're going to look at kind of a compelling profile full stop essentially. We're going to ask you a couple of questions first of all though. So I'd like to get a bit of background as to what you're looking for from this session. Are you looking to increase your influence, B, your job opportunities, or C, the number of new clients? So we've got a poll. Are you okay to run that, EJ? Yeah, great, fantastic. So if you just choose one of those, hopefully you can see the poll. Okay, crack on with your voting. Good work. Over 50% of you have voted so far. Just give you a couple of seconds while the rest of you decide which one fits you most closely. Okay, we're at 85%. That's probably last couple of seconds for any last minute voting. Okay, perhaps if we end the poll there and then share the results. Okay. So can everybody, so the majority, so 48% of you are looking to increase the number of new clients. Some of you are looking to increase your influence, but secondly, looking for job opportunities. So we've got a bit of a mixture of audience, but you'll be glad to know the principles apply regardless. So I'm just going to take a screen grab of that because that doesn't save on the recording. Okay, so thank you for your letting me know what you're looking for from the session. We're going to launch the second poll now, which is your use of LinkedIn. So are you using it every day, once a week, CV style just for job hunting? You've never used it at all, or you're not sure what LinkedIn really is about? So you're cracking away. Over 50% of you have voted, which is great. Give you a couple more seconds as to which fits most closely your use of LinkedIn right now. Okay, so 85% of you have voted, so we'll end the poll and share the results there. So, okay, wow, fantastic. 64% of you are using it every working day, which is fantastic. Okay, percentage are using it just once a week, and some of you are using it specifically for job hunting. So let me just take a quick screen grab of that one while we're there. Fantastic. Okay, so that's really useful. So I probably don't need to worry about what LinkedIn is for you guys then, but LinkedIn's PR says it's the biggest professional network on the internet. It's about finding the right job or internship. But the important thing is it's about connecting, strengthening professional relationships. And as mainly IOD members, that's not surprising that that's something you guys are familiar with. And they're using it for, and also they have the opportunity to learn additional skills there. So as we know, hopefully you know, it's about being a community. It is about that influencing, networking, connecting. It should be about sharing your knowledge, your expertise, information, learning, but becoming an authority essentially. If you're a subject matter expert or specialist in your industry or your field, it's a great opportunity to share that with others to help, accelerate where they want to be, whether that's as an organization or whether that's with clients or influencers. So I'd like to kind of ask this of you. Does this sound familiar? It's New Year's Day or the beginning of the new year. You want to increase in your profile, you want to review your profile for yourself or for your business. You may even put this job on the to-do list, but what often happens is the day job gets in the way again, and the task of looking at your business, looking at your profile never makes it to the top of the list, which becomes frustrating. I don't know if that's a story for anybody. Is anybody resonating with that or not? And if it is the case, this is one of the reasons why it might be frustrating for you. And a phrase I picked up, which I love, which is, it's hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle. The hardest person to market is yourself, okay? Even the top marketeers agree that the hardest person to market is yourself. So some people, a small percentage, have the ability to stand outside of themselves and look at all those differentiators that they bring or that their business brings. To give you a sense, we're going to be looking at Kirsten as an illustrated example of a LinkedIn profile. We're going to touch on Patrick and David as well, and here's the types of clients that I work with. So essentially, I'm the founder of Insightful Images, and I work with business leaders and individuals and small businesses particularly, who are fantastic at what they do, but realize the need to articulate the impact they have on their target audience in a clearer way to get the job they want, to expand their influence, or to get the clients they want on board. Okay, so these are the types of individuals I work with, and these are the types of businesses I work with, to give you a flavor. So we have an image of a load of penguins. What's that got to do with today? The advantage of social media in our internet world, as well as connecting, as we all are from different parts of the world, is that it gives us all the opportunity to have a voice. The disadvantage of social media and the internet is that there are lots of voices, and it's very noisy, it's very crowded, as I'm sure you've all experienced. But let me tell you a bit of a story. I mean, the point of today is how we're going to stand out from literally from that crowd of penguins in this. So I've got a nice story for you, which we're going to go back to 1866 and to South Africa and the diamond rush time. A farmer, very excited at the prospect of making his fortune, sold his farm and went touring around the country in search of diamonds. Unfortunately, after a few years, he becomes bankrupt and the story doesn't end well for him. But let's go back to the farm that he sold and the new owner who was entertaining a guest. The guest inquired about some rocks that were on the mantelpiece. And the new owner said, well, the farm is strewn with rocks exactly like that. And the guest said, that is the biggest diamond known to man. Okay, strangely enough, it wasn't kind of polished and drilled as these ones are. It was a kind of rough, raw diamond. That farm became the Kimberley Diamond Mine. So if we can, everyone could go on mute if that's possible. Oh, there we go. I think we found the person. Yes. So what's the point of the story? Why are we talking about it in this session here? And the reason why I love this story particularly is because I find when I'm working with my clients, those diamonds are absolutely hidden. We're all sitting on top of the diamonds, those differentiators, those USPs, those unique selling value propositions. But often we don't see them, okay? And the reason for this is back to that it's difficult to read the label when you're inside the bottle. But also, if we look at this, imagine this is a waterline, this is an iceberg. We know about the stuff that's above the waterline, the obvious visible value, what we can bring to an employer, what we can bring to an influencer, what we can bring to our prospective clients, okay? But I ask my clients a few questions that kind of dig a little bit deeper, and suddenly the hidden value and unexpected value appear. Now, as a business, one of the clients I was working with more recently is a tutoring business. They've got 150 tutors on their books, and it may not necessarily be anything sophisticated. It may be staring you in the face. So what was staring them in the face as a USP was the fact that they phoned up their new clients, or the parents of the tutoring business, of their clients, a week after they'd had a session. Okay, now I asked them, do they actually state that anywhere in their material, their website, their communications? And they said no. So from a customer service point of view, that's always good to know if you're going to be buying into their services, that you're going to be getting a follow-up call. So as I said, it may not be something that's, you know, huge. It may be something really small, but that kind of customer service technique is useful to share with others. But it may be something that's closer to home. And I'm going to bring some of those kind of examples up. But typically, when I'm working with my clients, the most common challenges that I come across are the following: that people find it difficult to express the true value that they offer. And that comes back to reading the label when you're inside the bottle. Another kind of cultural or personal characteristic kicks in, which is that people either undersell themselves or they're overly modest. And often they never have the time for the reasons we expressed earlier. It's just a difficult thing to do, so it never reaches the top of the list. How that shows up on LinkedIn profiles and across, you know, people's footprint of communications is people often list their attributes and their abilities, or those of the organization, first. Okay, they don't necessarily address the audience's issues. Okay, which is, I'm going to give an example, which is paramount. People want to read about themselves first, and the issues you're going to solve for them and the challenges you're going to solve. Okay, and that's a great way of hooking people in, especially in our very crowded marketplace. Okay. People often don't talk about their credibility, the awards they've won, or why they've won them, what was special about it, as an example. They don't bring out those differentiators because they can't necessarily see them. And often it's visually unengaging in terms of how things are presented. Okay, and I'm going to have a section specifically on that. Okay, images are the quickest way to communicate. And it's very underused and underplayed as a medium. And secretly, we all might be hoping it doesn't matter, all these aspects, it doesn't matter if we don't show up, but I'm afraid, sadly, it does. So the negative impact of that is that people are lost in the noise, in that kind of colony of penguins. They're not visible to the people they want to reach, whether that be clients, influencers, or employers. So that's often where people are on the left-hand side. So to get to the right-hand side, we want that engaging profile and presence reflecting your true value. So you connect with employers, contacts, influencers that you deserve to be connected to. And then you're actually engaging with them as well, which is the important part of that. So to get you from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, I have a 4-step process that I take my clients through, whether it's looking at LinkedIn profiles or whether it's looking at their business. And the first step is very much about discovering, okay, or rediscovering in many cases, understanding more about yourself, your values, your motivation, your purpose, and those differentiators, those USPs. Then it's important to understand who you're trying to reach. But even more important to understand is what their problems are, what your target audience's issues are, okay, and appeal to those. And then you tailor your USPs and values, purpose, etc., to fit those, okay. And it's important to bring that up in words, but it's also important, as I hinted at earlier, to bring that out in images, whether that's photos or film, and of course, whether in sound, whether that's podcasts. And then finally, once you've got that foundation there, the important thing, of course, is to engage. So absolutely put your contact details in the chat and engage with each other. It's expanding that network and expanding that circle of influence is incredibly important. So the result of that is when you're talking, you're addressing your audience issues. You're bringing out your USPs and your credibility, and you make it all round engaging. And Holy Grail, as a result of all that, your profile will be standing out. You'll be much more visible, and the people you're trying to reach will notice and engage, but there's a technique to that as well. So we're going to look at the written profile with illustrated client examples. We're going to have a breakout group session, you'll be glad to know. We're going to be talking about communication through images particularly. And profile photos, always a good one, especially for LinkedIn. And I've got some free resources, a few moments for some questions. I'm going to have a summary to close, and we will be around afterwards as well. So if you've got some burning questions, or there's lots of questions, we'll be around to answer those. So first of all, it's about you and creating your compelling profile. The question is, what is your message? What do you want to say to who you're trying to reach? But importantly, where does your target audience hang out? It might be on LinkedIn, but it may not be. It may be in some industry specifics. They may be on different platforms. They may be face-to-face events. They may be in printed media as well. So of course you need to go wherever they are. LinkedIn is just one of many outlets for your communications, as I'm sure you're aware. So let's take an example. I mentioned Kirsten. So this is her before look in terms of her profile photo, and this is the look afterwards. And we are going to talk more about profile photos. But I'm sure you can see there's a significant difference in the style of the photo, first of all. Now, Kirsten, as you can see, is a managing director of an organization and a sustainability consultant. So this was what she had in her about section before I started working with her. I'll let you read that. Okay. What I did as part of the exercise, I took her through the 4 steps. So I spent some time understanding more about who she was, what her purpose was, what her differentiators were. And importantly, spoke with her to understand who her target audience was. Okay. So rather than looking at everybody, because if you target everybody, you end up with nobody. Okay. So hone in on who you're trying to reach and we write accordingly. So one of Kirsten's aspects is she's a sustainability consultant. Okay. And talking to her, she talked frequently about the Cambridge Institute for Leadership, Sustainable Leadership. Okay. So I did a bit of research and found this quote, which I thought worked well for the top of her profile. I'll let you read that. Now, I don't suggest necessarily that you all run off and find a quote to slap at the top of your about section, but it's certainly something to consider. So this maps on really well to Kirsten's values, her motivations, and her purpose. So I felt it was a really strong statement and quotation to feature at the top of her profile to grab attention from the off and say exactly what she's about as an individual. I then went on to write for her. I'll let you read this. She specialises in working, okay, working with leading companies. So she works with businesses to do these things. I hope you're not reading this on a phone. You don't have to read all of it, but if you want to have a look further detail, definitely go to Kirsten's profile after this session. There's a subtle difference in what we're trying to do here from what she had, which was almost listing what she could do. What we're doing here is, the point of it is an organization or somebody in an organization who needs somebody to align their strategy and build investment benefit business cases, or who's looking for somebody who's great on ESG policy. Literally, they're reading through or glancing down this list going, we need some of that. Yeah, we're not very good at, developing our ESG policy, for example. We need to focus on that. So as somebody's reading through this, they're going, oh, I'd like some of that, and they want to read on and find out more of what she can offer that's specific to the challenges her target audience have. Okay, so it's kind of subtle turning around. Rather than just listing all the things that you can do, it's listing it in the context of the problems that the organizations you want to reach have. Okay, if that makes sense. As I mentioned earlier, if you try and appeal to everybody, you'll end up with nobody. So when you're thinking about your target audience, think about the sweet spot client who will hit the bullseye for you. You will naturally pick up others around it. So don't be scared that you're narrowing your market too much. The more you can niche, the better. It doesn't exclude you from other types of organizations or different employers or prospects reaching you. But the more specific you can be, the more people will get the idea of what you can do and what you offer. So let's continue a little more. So Kirsten has two roles. So one is within a corporate organization, but she also has her own business. Okay. So there's a bit more about her sustainability role there. As I say, go and have a read of Kirsten's profile if you'd like to. But she's also managing director of a social enterprise. So we've got one line describing the social enterprise. So it's focusing on parents, essentially. So what we're doing here is pulling out who she's trying to reach. So people and the problems that they have, are kind of finding that work-life balance with a family, and those who are suffering from being penalized from that career break financially, and those who are suffering from an overload of parenting advice. So I don't know if any parents here can identify with those issues. But again, what I'm using the bullet points for is to highlight the problems the target audience has. Okay. And then we go on to say how we resolve those issues. Okay, so what are the problems? How do you solve them? Almost in that order. Yeah, sorry. So they address them by bringing well-being and balance by the live events and digital community. So that's how they're supporting them. And there's more detail about that in the experience section. But the difference and the twist is we've moved from listing what Kirsten offers in a kind of generic context to actually understanding her target audience issues and presenting herself as a solution to those issues, whether she's an employee solving some of the challenges that a target audience might have, or whether she's appealing to the people she's trying to reach as potential clients and prospects. She's calling out the problems they have and presenting her organization, in that second case, as a solution to those issues. Okay. Makes sense, everybody? Okay. And she's saying what she can do for them specifically. So if we look at her experience section, she gives an overview here of what she does. I'll let you have a read. But an important tip here about the organization that she works for, don't assume that everybody will know the organization and what they do that you've worked for. I used to work for Oracle, a large technology company, the second largest in the world, but not everybody has heard of Oracle. So don't assume everybody will know. Put an outline. People won't click, okay? So even though this has got KBR, you can click on KBR, make it easy for people, give a kind of one line about the organization in the experience section itself. Okay. Well, I should say, people don't often click. A small percentage of people, if they're really interested, will find out, but put the information there for them to read and get a sense. Now, David is another of my clients, but to give you a flavour of what his about section looked like before, it was literally contact details. Okay. So again, understanding more about his motivations, his purpose, his values, and what stood him out, we changed it to this as a leading line. So a successful sales director who enjoys working with passionate people who believe in the power of technology to change lives. Okay. He then went on to say this. So here I'm using a quotation or testimonial. So testimonials on LinkedIn profile, you may be aware, appear right at the bottom of the profile. If you've got something that's really reflects who you are and what you can bring to either your prospects or to an organization, I'd suggest you might want to think about bringing it into the about section. Okay, don't let it languish in the kind of hidden nether regions of a LinkedIn profile. So bring out those fantastic quotes where you can. So we're summarizing here with David that he's known for 3 different areas. One is his strength of relationships, and it goes on to give an explanation of how he does that. Then his second strong area is the love of technology. So we're bringing out those kind of USPs and those differentiators that David has, and the impact he has. So can I highlight? I can't highlight on this. Oh. So where you can give quantifiable examples is really useful. Okay, of the impact you've had for a client or for an organization. What have you done that's made measurable difference is always, as we know, really useful to convey. Okay, so that's what we've done there with an example. And the third area for David that's a highlight is sales leadership. Okay, so what does he do there? With there, we've actually included a quote from David himself. Okay, we've had a chance to read that. So that's been very much about the about section. We're going to look at a few other tips here as well. So this was another of my clients, and this is the before section. So as you can imagine, that's a slab of text, essentially, which is a bit overwhelming for anybody, and it's a bit of a CV as well, a life history. So you probably want to change that as well. So LinkedIn hasn't got a great deal of formatting ability or options, but you can put in bullet points, you can structure it as well, but certainly I'd recommend not having a slab of text that looks kind of pretty impenetrable. Okay, so skip doing that is a recommendation. You absolutely have a profile photo, have a cover page image, and there's also options to add featured aspects, something that's really vital and showcases what you do is really handy to do. Also, you can add rich media to your profile, okay, in the experience sections particularly, whether that's images, whether that's a website link, whether that's a video, whether it's a report or text. Of course, you can add your CV there as well, but do make use of those areas where you can append additional information. Most people won't read them, but for the ones that are really interested in terms of what you do, have that information available for them. Okay. So we're going to go into breakout rooms here. So the question for you, you're going to go into groups of 2, hopefully, mainly 2. But the question for you, what is the top priority change for your profile? Okay, so introduce yourselves and have a quick chat about what that top priority change you think you're going to undertake for your profile, given the information we've gone through so far. So you've got 5 minutes to do that. All right. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. So there's kind of 55 of you. Oh no, 46. So let's put you into So 5 minutes time. Everybody clear what they're doing? Anybody got any questions? Good, okay. See you in 5 minutes time. Okay. So now you're back in the room. If you could add to the chat the one thing you're going to focus on as a priority change for your profile or your positioning. Get cracking on the old chats, that'd be fantastic. Craig Collins, hello Craig. What are you going to change about in the about section?
Hi Denise. I thought my about section was quite good, but it's age-old story. You come back and look at it and go, actually, no, it's not quite right.
Okay.
Mine's probably a little bit too wordy, so I need to be more succinct.
Okay,
you have bullet point sections, but I do start a block of text, and I think that's off-putting.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Just cull it, really.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you. So we've also got, what have we got? To add a quote. Yeah, adding links in my experience. Vision. Okay, invite feedback from clients. Change from a CV start. Yeah, that's great. How to change my target audience. Okay. Hopefully how to target them as well. Featured items, I've never used it. Rewrite my about section, which is carried too long, and about myself. Oh, good one, Simon. Add more multimedia content, fantastic. Identify the target client segment, yeah, brilliant. Improve on what I could do for an organization, yeah, good, yeah, this is all looking fantastic, brilliant. Add a testimonial to the about section, refine, yeah. More thought about the audience, absolutely. Yeah, good stuff, great. Great, I'm glad to hear this. So well done everybody for that. So it looks like you're going to be taking something away, and sorry for those who were by themselves. Hopefully you've thought of something that you want to focus on. Okay. Okay, so David Goodacre, you've got a couple of challenges there, but yes, let's move on. So we've gone through the discover step, we've flown through tailoring. We're now going to look at the kind of show in different formats, and particularly in images. So pictures speak louder than words. Pictures or images, still or moving, are the fastest way to communicate. Okay, and it's a much underused medium, especially when we're faced with this crowded marketplace. Okay. So let me tell you a little bit of the science behind why this is. Okay, so I'm sure you're familiar with the phrase, a picture paints 1,000 words. Another twist on that I like is word add the facts, images add the emotion. Okay, and why do image add emotion? Well, it's thought that the brain processes images 60,000 times faster than text. Okay, the brain has 100 billion neurons, so 30% of the brain's neurons are devoted to sight, as opposed to 8%, which is devoted to sense of touch, and 3% to hearing. So sight is the biggest proportion of the brain's neurons, okay? And this is for our survival purposes, okay? We need to work out whether we can trust somebody, first of all. Imagine you're on savannah and it's hot day, you're by yourself. If you stick your head up above the grass, your brain is subconsciously trying to work out whether there are other people around, whether there's a face or not, and whether you need to run or hide. So that's why 30% of the brain is devoted to vision, to keep us safe, but also to find food, okay, for daily sustenance, and to find a mate. So those three things really to continue the species. So sight is massive. If you think about it, we're born with the gift of being able to see. We're not born with the gift of being able to read. We have to work out what these squiggles and shapes actually mean, and that takes time and slows the kind of that process down. So seeing something, we don't need any translation. It's a direct feed into the brain and is very powerful and very quick. So that's why images are very useful communication tools, whether that's infographics or whether images, doesn't really matter. Words are the fact, images connect you, especially when there's a face in the image. Okay, so little question for you. Have a look at this. It's not going to be a spot the difference. I'm going to have another poll. So, who sees the face? Time to vote again. Getting for over 70% of you have voted. Okay, I'll ask for a couple more potentially. Okay, and then we'll show you the results of this. Okay. So here are the results. So just over half of you see the face and 11 of you have no idea what I'm talking about. So let's have another look at the image. So for those of you who couldn't see the face, these little noduly things are the eyes, here's the nose, and here's the mouth, okay? So this ability to see faces and things is actually got a name. It's called pareidolia. And it is the psychological response to seeing faces and other significant and everyday items in random stimulus, okay? So why is this important? Okay, so if you don't have a profile photo, people can't see the whites of the eyes literally to establish that trust, okay? People, it's almost like having a Belisha beacon. It draws people's attention to the page, okay, or to whatever you have on the page. So that's why for testimonials, it's really handy to have the face or a photograph of the person who's given that testimonial. It adds greater credibility and it draws attention to that testimonial as well. And it draws attention to your profile. As Airbnb state on their sign-up process, anonymity erodes trust. It's helping prevent that connection by not having a profile photo. So that's really important to have. Quick question for you. This isn't a poll, this is just in your mind. How quickly does it take to form an impression of a stranger just from seeing their face? Is it 1 minute, 5 seconds, 1 second, or 1/10 of a second? Okay. Well, the answer is actually 1/10 of a second. Okay, that's a blink of an eye. It is super quick. So that's 30% of the brain's neurons processing really fast to keep us safe. Okay, now here's an interesting thing. That ability to work out a first impression happens whether you look, meet somebody in person or whether you look at a photograph. Okay, so this was a LinkedIn profile photo that I came across. You can all draw your conclusions as to whether that works for you or not. But as a first impression, is it doing what you want it to do for your profile audience, for your target audience? Okay, so a question to ask yourselves is that's a very important one. So here's an example of some clients I've worked with, their before photographs and their after photographs. So again, you can draw your conclusion as to what's having more impact, what's looking more professional, I'm sure. Interesting to note, the guy on the right has got some medals. That's one of his USPs. He's he's been in the army. So obviously that stands him out quite significantly. It might be that you're just professional and approachable, especially if you're customer facing. Okay. So a smile and looking approachable is useful. Now, this is one of my clients who's an independent financial advisor. One of his new clients came on board and then sent him this feedback. Okay. So they said, "You'll laugh when I lick through the list of IFAs and you seem to have the nicest, most honest looking face." They went on to say, "I expect you think that's a strange approach." So that's that 1/10 of a second processing going on, that kind of survival instinct of working out, first of all, whether we need to run away or not, or have a fight, or whether we can trust somebody. And hopefully in a LinkedIn business context, you're trying to work out whether you can trust somebody, especially if they're looking after your finances for you. Okay. We have Alison here, who's a coach. So one of her prospects found her on the International Coaching Federation website and said this: "I loved your photo. It showed so much compassion." Now, for me, there's a difference in these photos versus kind of standard kind of headshot photos. It's subtle, but these are perfectly well lit images, but for me, there's a little bit more hesitancy in there. So have a think about your profile photo. I've got a guide that I'll talk about in a moment to give you some more ideas for your profile photos. So here's the engaged portrait photos and versus those headshots. So for me, there's a massive difference in terms of making it much more engaging. So in summary, it is a visual world. People connect with people and people they know, like, and trust. And pictures speak louder than words. So pictures are a great way of conveying not just your profile photo, but illustrating your profile, and whether that's your website, on LinkedIn or wherever. They're a great way of drawing people in if they're appropriate images or infographics, graphics generally. So we've done a quick tour of the method I use with my clients, which is all about discovering your USPs, tailoring your USPs to your target audience and their problems specifically that you're going to help them with. And we've looked a quick dunk at show. Now we're going to look at that important element of storytelling and engaging your target audience very briefly. Now, if we go back to Kirsten as an example, in LinkedIn, it's useful to interact, of course. So liking somebody's post is useful. Adding a comment on their post is even more useful, showing that it's either an interesting topic, or you have experience, or you've got a story that can add to it. It's also useful to, share. So here on the right hand side, we've got Kirsten sharing somebody else's post, which again, sharing people's content is useful to your audience. You don't have to always create your own content. Sharing is a great way of spreading the news and spreading your influence. So that interaction is really important, and commenting is really handy, not just liking, okay? And creating your own content is very useful. In summary, Google did some research and they found that for a new prospect to reach out and connect with you, you need to put out 7 hours of content that they kind of interact with 11 different times over 4 different channels or 4 different platforms. So 7 hours of your content on 11 different occasions over 4 different channels. So that could be on LinkedIn, it could be they meet you in person, it could be they attend a webinar, it could be they see a social media post, they read a brochure, so on and so forth, listen to a podcast. So that's quite a staggering amount of content that you have to put out before somebody potentially engages with you. So as we know, there's no silver bullet to this stuff. It is putting information out that's relevant to your target audience and encouraging them to interact and engage and build that know, like, trust dynamic for them to, at the right time, reach out and connect with you and say they'd like to understand a bit more about what it is you do, so on and so forth. Okay, so that's quite a useful number to bear in mind. So we've whistled through a number of different things here, including looking at illustrated examples. We've looked at images specifically and profile photos. We've gone through that 4-step process of discovering, tailoring, showing, and storytelling. Now I'm going to tell you a tiny bit about the free resources that are available. We've got a scorecard. So for employees, this is a useful kind of self-assessment, time to reflect on how you're coming across in your social media. I don't know if you could add that to the chat, EJ, that'd be fantastic. So that link there, you will find the scorecard. For those of you who've got businesses, we've got one for you as well, specific For your client reach, again, go to that URL and you'll be able to find that. You'll find some resources on there, give you access to some resources once you've completed your scorecard. So here's the 10 profile mistakes as a starting point. So for employers or prospects, we've got a website, some mistakes that are commonly made on websites for those of you who've got businesses, and for those of you who hate having your photograph taken, there's some information there as well that might help you. As I say, complete the scorecard and then you'll get access to those. I've also got notes on this session that are available. So if you want a bit more detail about what we've gone through, then head to that URL. But quick time for some questions. So has anybody got any questions they'd like to share, or anything additionally from the chat that they'd like to take away from this session, or they've taken away?
Yeah, I've got one question for you, Denise. You talk about getting people to, sorry, I'm putting the photograph up, to people to actually endorse you. How do you do that if most of your clients are government organisations who won't officially, recommend you?
Well, if they can't, yeah, that is tricky for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's some other spheres you've worked in that can give you some feedback.
Sure.
Or can they give anonymous feedback? Can they not name themselves? I mean,
I'm sorry, because most of my work is with governments around the world, and they don't like to actually be named as they've had a problem.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I guess the best, that's a tricky one then. So of course, I'm sure you'll have case studies, kind of examples without naming organizations and types of things you do. But yeah, that is going to be a tricky one, unless you've got somebody willing who's not in that field to give an example.
Sure. Okay. Thanks for that.
Okay.
Hi, Denise.
Just bear with, sorry, Nick had his hand up first.
Yeah, it's really.
I'll come to you, Michael. Thank you.
Hi, I just want to latch on to that thing that Simon said, because I have a similar related problem in that it's difficult to get recommendations because I'm a consultant. The company that uses me would hire or outsourcing to me, but they introduce me as one of their employees. And so their clients, they don't want me to take any credit for the project. They want all the credit for the project to go to their company, not to some external consultant. And so they just generally don't like me to even indicate that I've worked for them on my LinkedIn page.
Okay, yeah, that's challenging.
Similar in a way.
Yeah. Michael.
I wear several different hats, and so I want to be a specialist when I'm talking in one sector, when I'm talking to one company, and a specialist doing something slightly different when I'm talking to someone else. So I'm constantly changing which company I have at the top of my list. But I mean, how do you get around that? Is there any kind of way that you can?
Well, if you go back to that Kirsten profile again, what we did was a kind of base foundation of what she does. Generally, I would say that, for all organizations, okay? So there may be some key elements that are this, I don't know what, obviously happy to, if we went into this in detail, is understand what key elements are the key elements that you do for the both specialist areas.
Potentially.
Is there a Venn diagram overlap?
It's more like from a marketing perspective. You want to be the specialist in a particular area without diluting that.
Yes. So it could either be you have the kind of this shared elements that you bring out, or you keep them separate in the about section. But you can still show that you're a specialist in the areas, even in those different areas, because of what you bring out. So you can be specialist in multiple areas, but absolutely bring out the why you're, those uniques as to why you're different compared to other people who do similar to you. Okay,
thanks.
That's what so you've got two options there. Anybody else? Somebody's having problems with the link, which
I've just pasted
Okay,
the
we're
full
sorted
link,
on that.
so hopefully that will work for you now. I've just checked it. It's supposed to
Okay.
work.
Great stuff. Any other questions? I mean, I guess the key thing, I'll just a kind of final reminder of what, if you, is that sharing? Yeah, okay. So if you're finding it hard to do, don't give yourself a hard time. It's a hard thing to step outside of yourself and understand it. And so it's often useful to bounce these things off people. So recommend that. But of course, we're looking, often we talk about the things at the top of the iceberg. By getting somebody skilled to ask a few probing questions, you can start to uncover that hidden value. We want to move you from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. There's a 4-step process that you can go through, try and go through yourselves. But remember, you've all got those shining diamonds that you're sitting on that you may not be bringing out, the ones that your clients would love to know about, or love to hear if only they knew about them or you articulated them in some way. So go forth and stand out. Hopefully it looks like you've picked up some tips, which is great. So I'm pleased to hear. If you do have a look at some of the resources for additional tips, particularly on photographs of yourselves, and complete the scorecards, and you can have access to those resources, or just use them as a bit of a check and balance about how you're positioning yourself. So I'm going to be here for another few minutes, but thank you so much for coming along today. Thank you to the IAD and Emma Jane, EJ, for hosting the event, kindly hosting and doing all the background work here. And enjoy your afternoon and the rest of the week.